This is the Efficiency Equation, a show for plant managers spilling hard earned wisdom and secrets in the search for the efficiency code in liquid manufacturing. I'm Constantine, together here with Eugene, and today we're hosted by Dan Rennie. Let's dive in.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I can't believe we're already at episode 4 of the Efficiency Equation podcast. And we've had a massive first 3 episodes. I really hope that you got the chance to dig into those topics that we previously discussed, because what we're talking about today kind of builds on them in a way, or at least we've splintered some nuggets here and there along the way in what we're going to talk about, which is quality. So the question of quality control, especially from you plant manager's point of view. And again, we've got our usual squad here with Eugene and Konstantin Paradisov. Welcome, you guys. Welcome to episode 4. So we're diving into the most discussed topics and picking up nuggets from your conversations with plant managers. So the most discussed topics when it comes to quality control. Because quality control at the end of the day is about saving money and about making clients happier and making coworkers less miserable. Because we all know that when rework is high, people get frustrated, which is a problem, which impacts a lot of things down the line. So, Konstantin, I'm going to turn to you first of all. What are the 4 major areas that we want to discuss? Because these are the topics that come up over and over and over again when quality is on the table.
Yeah, absolutely. When we talk to customers at different plants, there are these 4 areas that come up. One is the QC lab issues. So if you're talking about businesses like edible oils, food and beverage, where they constantly have these quality samples, high volume of quality samples, there are certain QC lab issues that are recurring, or QC lab concerns is probably a better way to put it. And then we're going to talk about that. The second topic here is process quality, not so much the samples themselves, but how the quality is looked at, how it's measured throughout the whole process. So whether that's rework, statistical process control, or things like that. And then we're going to look at the third topic, which is system integration, places with more integrated solutions versus less integrated solutions and how their concerns differ. And then the last one, the fourth one, is audit and lot traceability. And again, when you were talking about bulk liquid manufacturing, such as edible oils and food and beverage, tracing product lots of liquids has its own challenges. And that does come up when there are quality audits. So those are the 4 topics.
Got that. Got that. And Eugene, just to tease our audience a little bit, which of these 4 do you think is like the most controversial or the most exciting or the most special one in any aspect?
It really depends on the audience. For some people, the most exciting and interesting topic would be the flexibility of your tools to provide custom testing, custom certificate of analysis to your clients to be able to quickly navigate the system and make sure that everybody has the proper results whenever they're available. For others, it would be how easy can we go through an audit, because that's their main concern. And they would say, yeah, every time somebody requests an audit from us, we want to make sure that we have the right tools that can help us quickly deal with tracking down everything that we need to track down. So it's really all of these 4 areas that were named. They might be uh, more interesting to certain people and less interesting to others. So that's why we're trying to cover this whole spectrum, just to make sure that we have everybody's covered in this
Got
episode.
it. And from the first 3 episodes, we sort of know that you, the audience, what you like most is when Eugene and Konstantin bring examples from real life cases. And the first topic is all about, it's like very real and very tangible, which is issues that come up at the QC labs. So I'm sure you've got some stories about that. Yeah.
Absolutely. So one thing that comes to mind, and this happened on multiple occasions, whenever you go through the initial setup and you work with people with QC management and some other key personnel at the plant, they give you all these specifications of all the different test methods that they perform on their products. And you go through it, and you can see how before they had the system, they might have done a lot of the work manually. And manually means they might have recorded it on paper, in Excel, somewhere. But there is always a sense of rhyme and reason to this, some kind, right? But then they go into the system and they anticipate that whatever they just gave you, that it's going to work for most of the situations. And after they go live, everybody just sort of starts their smooth sailing, right? Until such time that they call you again and say, well, we thought we took care of everything, but this customer of ours requires us to do this particular test a certain way. And by the way, when we generate the documents that are shipped with the product, they also want us to indicate something very specific on that document. And so when you face those requests that are custom requests from their customer, the question is, with everything you got going on and that high volume of samples, how easy is it to make the adjustment and capture the requirements of that customer in such a way that when they ask for it next time, you're going to be able to provide them the answers in the way that they want. You don't have to then say, oh, yeah, last time you asked for this, let me do this customization again. So that flexibility. So we're talking about speed with which they can react, but also retain all of those customizations and be able to do that again. And so that comes up a lot. I'm sure Eugene has something to add.
Yes, basically you could think of it as like, here's what we do normally. These are the tests that we do. These are the documents that we create. And then the system says, well, okay, but you want this for your other customer, right? You want this to show this extra statement on the document. You want for this customer to have some additional tests. And you just say, yeah, well, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to create a specific customer requirements spec and then go against that and create my CFA template that's going to be tied to that customer. That once and done setup allows you to then never think about it again, which means that the customer satisfaction goes up, right? Because they don't have to repeat their ask. Once they've asked you to do this, you've set it up and you don't have to come back to it. And you know that you're not going to forget next time that, oh, this customer also wanted this particular test because it's already done. It's already set up. You don't have to think about it. The system takes care of it. That's very valuable because nobody has to keep a cheat sheet saying, oh, this customer wants that, that customer wants another thing. It's all done. It's all taken care of. Once you set it up, you never have to think about it again. I think that's very valuable for the client to have such a tool.
When you don't have this tool, what does that lead to?
Well, like I said, if you don't have it in place, then you potentially have to somehow remember to do this every time that an order for that specific customer comes up where they wanted something else additional to what you do normally. How do you do that? Somehow you need to remember that. Of course, you can't really rely on people's memory. So you're probably going to have some kind of cheat sheet in your lab, maybe that will tell you, okay, if the order comes in for this customer, make sure to do X, Y, and Z, and make sure to also add another statement on the C of A because that's what they want. Okay, what are the chances that you will overlook that you forget even to look at the cheat sheet at that time? The chances are pretty good. The system doesn't have to look at the cheat sheet. It's set up. It knows if the order is for that customer or not, and it will take care of that without you having to worry about it at all. So again, back to customer satisfaction.
And just to add to that, I can remember something specific in this space where we assume, as we talk, that even if they handle this stuff manually, that people are always going to be there that know what to do with this. But very frequently there's turnover. And so what we've had to deal with is exactly this kind of situation where something is done manually by a person and that person moves on to the next role. The new person comes in. And when they try to repeat this, they actually don't know that some of the information that they have recorded manually somewhere was not coming from the system. And so in our case, the example was some kind of special certification number that was very important to the customer. And the system never put that certification number on there because we were never asked, because somebody just took the document and slapped the number on top. But then when that person left, the next person didn't know that they needed to do this. So the best thing to do is to always involve the system and make these changes so that if you have turnover on your side, then the next person is not stuck scratching their head trying to figure out how to continue with any of this. That's actually a very real issue.
If I may add on top of that, yes, so repeatability of the process, very important. That's what Konstantin was talking about, but also traceability of all those changes. So if the system allows you to maintain control of every change that you make and put into production, you are well prepared to always go back and say, how was it 2 days ago? Which way was it configured a week ago? Because every change to a version controlled process would be kept in the tool, right? In your systems. That is very important when you're trying to trace down some errors or mishaps or customer complaints. So all of this together basically brings your customer satisfaction, repeatability, and stability of the process together.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know where, but I heard a statistic or a general observation that quality issues are increasing as you go into the summer months. And people were scratching their heads, like even in highly automated industries and plants, why are quality issues on the rise when you get into July and August? And the simple answer, people started investigating it, is because many people go on vacation. And even though the processes are supposed to be completely automated or almost completely automated, like there's still so much reliance on human input and people's minds and the information and the stuff that's in here and not in the machines and not on computers and not in the systems that, when people go on vacation, all of a sudden you don't have that information at hand, which leads to problems. And then there's this anecdote that I heard that, once some plant manager went on vacation, let's call her Tracy, and and then somebody called her. Of course, Tracy didn't pick up because she was, I don't know, in Disneyland or wherever with the family. And then they texted her saying that, hey, we need this reference number from the customer because like we have no idea where it is. And you talk to the customer. So where do we find this information, this little reference? And then Tracy was like, oh, I know it's on a Post-it note and it's somewhere on my desk. And then they walk over to Tracy's desk and they're like, okay, well, Tracy, you have like 27 Post-it notes here just on your screen and like some additional over on the desk. So can you tell us more? And luckily Tracy was able to remember that it's on a red Post-it note somewhere on the computer screen. And so that brought down the possibility to just like 4 or 5 Post-it notes. And eventually they found the Post-it note where Tracy recorded that crucial piece of information. But everybody was like, that's not how it's supposed to run. This is insane. It's
Exactly.
2020. This was a couple of years ago. So, it's 2022, but like, there's no excuse for running operations this way.
And we see that those number of Post-it notes goes down. The number goes down as you have the proper tools in place. Not to say that they completely go away. In some cases, people stick to their habits no matter what, but it definitely brings that down. So you can rely on knowledge being inside of the system rather than in somebody's head who's on vacation right now.
Okay, Konstantin, the second topic you brought up was process quality, unless you wanted to add to this previous one still.
Actually, what you were just talking about gives us a nice transition to process quality. I was just going to say that from what I've seen, I could say that probably nobody has 100% coverage in such a way that when a person goes on vacation, that every single thing that they have in their head is somewhere in the process done in some systematic way. There are degrees of this, and this is where we get into capability maturity matrix and companies with low maturity level and higher maturity level. The ones that are higher have less dependence on this kind of stuff, that some key knowledge is in somebody's head, but nobody is at 100%. And the companies that are lower on the maturity matrix level, they're more dependent on this. So while it may be that the base operations are covered while somebody goes on vacation, the special cases where you may have a customer that only takes the product if it meets the tightest of the specs, and only looks a certain way. And, when you have those kinds of things, and there might have been a key person dealing with that customer that is now on vacation, and they forgot to warn somebody else that something else some kind of order is coming up, you still might have issues. But overall, yes, you have these companies with a lower maturity level where there's a lot of posts that's happening, and more mature companies where there's less of it. And it's even not just at the company level, it could be within a company, it could be different by site, because sites operate at least semi-autonomously. So you have some sites that are more mature, some sites that are less mature. I'm talking about production sites, right? And so in there, we talk about tracking rework properly. So if we track it properly, we can then analyze the quality of what we're doing. Then a lot of people in manufacturing like to talk about Lean Six Sigma. And funny enough, in many companies, it's just that they like to talk about it, but there isn't enough expertise to really do anything with it. So people frequently just say, "Oh, we're having a Kaizen meeting," and they just know the fancy word, but they're just really sitting down and trying to brainstorm how to improve the process. That's really it. But in other cases, there's a little bit more discipline in this. And again, what does lean manufacturing, what does Six Sigma care about? It's making sure that your process is stable, predictable, produces results to the spec, and that you're minimizing the number of defects coming out of your production. So all of that leads into statistical process control, which again, with the lower maturity level companies or sites, statistical process control is something that people talk about and they say they want it, but it requires a little bit more on the people side to actually understand what they're after and how to use the tools. So yes, the tools and solutions are there that provide more or less what they want. But frequently in today's conversations, we see that the customers really don't know what they want. They want the general idea. So this is where we put on the consultant hat and talk them through it and make sure that they understand that this is what they're going to get. This is not what they're going to get, depending on the situation. And it comes down to making sure that you need to have that process quality. So as long as the conversation is there, that's a good start, because in a lot of places, there isn't even a conversation about having process quality and built-in quality. So that's my 2 cents on it. And I wanted to see if Eugene maybe has anything to add.
Yeah, just a little bit, I guess, from the example point of view, maybe. So we had situations where the client would say, "We want SPC. We want SPC," which is statistical process control. And you say, "Okay, great. We're with you. We're with you 100%. You want SPC. We get it. So here's an example of SPC." And they will say, "No, we don't like that. That doesn't look good to us. Why are all these dots all over the place? Why are they outside of the boundaries, outside of the limits?" And you say, "Well, this is SPC. This is what you wanted." And that's how you realize that they wanted something which they thought was SPC, but since a lot of people don't even understand how to read those charts and numbers, you would have to start with first, okay, if you heard the term of statistical process control and you think you want it, let's first make sure you understand what you're looking at. Because in a lot of cases, you will look at something and say, "I don't like what I'm seeing." And that's because you're reading it wrong, because you're not really understanding what this particular SPC chart is representing. And that's where a lot of fun comes in, saying, "No, no, this looks good." You don't understand. You think this is looking bad, but it's not. It's actually cool. You're in control. You think that, oh, there's an outlier here, there's an outlier there, and now you're in panic mode. It's like, no, no, don't panic. You're in control. You're fine. Or maybe the other way around, where it's really bad and they look and say, "Oh, look at all these pretty dots. They look good to us." And no, no, it doesn't look good right now. So they don't really understand in many cases how to read it, because it's not as simple as your regular charts that everybody is used to looking at. So that's why proper education in that case, to make sure that the client, if they are asking for something, they understand what they're looking at, instead of panicking because they see something they think is bad, or the other way, they think it's good, but it's not. That's very important. To have the tools, yes, but also to have the knowledge how to consume those tools.
And I would take it one step further. It goes back to the mindset. So very frequently, people don't like to be graded. And when they see a chart, it could be SPC chart that shows poor performance, the reaction is, "Oh, let me fix this so it looks good." And we try to talk about this as much as we can with our clients, that actually you got to get past that reaction. You are looking at these tools to make your processes better. So of course, you totally want to see some issues because you're going to fix those issues and make things better. If you fix the chart such that it looks good, then there's nothing left to fix on the process side. So it goes back to the mindset that if your mind is open to making your processes better, then come in with that mindset, and people like us will help you make sense of SPC charts and where to go next. And then the tools are there as the next step to help out make things better on a consistent basis.
Listening to both of you, like there's this one big like elephant in the room question, which I feel precedes everything, which is something like SPC. The very first question should be, okay, why do you want it? So if somebody comes to you and says that we want SPC, the first question would be like, why? What are you hoping to get out of it? What's the information that you don't have now that you are hoping to get from SPC? And how will you act on it? Which is a different story. But first, like, what are you hoping to get out of it? What sort of information? And then very often, and this, like, if you've done any consulting in any field, it doesn't have to be process control or anything else. In any field, you'll come across people who, just like you said, Konstantin, they will want charts and stats and numbers to validate what they're doing so that they can sell it up and say, okay, look, the numbers show that we're doing everything fine. And when you start with the why, okay, it's like, what are you hoping to get out of SPC? This very quickly becomes apparent. They just want a pretty chart, or if they actually want to pinpoint the problems to make the entire process and flow better.
Right. They just want a cool word sometimes.
Yeah.
And they want that cool word to be on their side of what they're doing today.
Because their competitors have it, right?
Yeah.
Or the competitors have it.
Right. And also to sell up, like you said, like if I will say to my management that I have SPC and I'm in control and look at all these charts that show that I'm doing great, I guess that is validation, that you're looking for validation instead of looking for potential areas of improvement. Because SPC, while it can serve as a validating tool, the main idea is to ensure that whatever you're doing is in fact giving you a good process quality. And if not, look at the information that you're provided with the SPC data and the charts to see where you can potentially find those areas of improvement and how you can go about them. And once you do make some changes, you still continue to use the SPC to see if that change that you make actually has positive feedback on the data that you're collecting with SPC, and you have the proper track of improvement along the way. Not just like, oh, we found this, we know what to do, let's just do it and that's it, and forget about it and never look at SPC again. That's the wrong way. You have to continue to use the tools to see if the improvements or changes, it may not be improvements, maybe a change that actually makes it worse. So the changes that you make, they in fact have a positive impact on what you're doing. But the only way to do that is by analyzing the data over a certain period of time. You can't just say, let's just do it and now wipe our hands and everything's great. You have to keep monitoring, keep looking at the data, understanding what you're looking at, what you're looking at, and then taking actions one at a time to make sure that you're on the right track.
And what Eugene just said brings me to this point about this whole process quality topic, that for lower level maturity organizations, it's already a big win to just be able to do what Eugene just said, to collect the data properly, which serves as a baseline for any of your continuous improvement efforts. Because if you don't have the data, it's very difficult to do any kind of analysis. So this is just an understanding that we want to spread with the plant managers, that first step to any of this is to get the data in a place where you can actually look at it and analyze it. And that's a big point of discussion.
The more data, the better.
Yeah. So is getting the data, does that make for a good segue into our third point, which is system integration? Or it's not as elegant?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So when we talk about our third segment of system integration, we're talking about a quick comparison of businesses pre-systems. We're talking a lot of dependency on Excel or paper clipboards. And in those cases, and we've seen a lot of those, people can collect some data very quickly, but there is no enforcement of quality of how they collect it. So we've seen a lot of operators at the shop floor scribble something on the clipboard. And besides the point that it's hard to read and they're not making it easy to read for the other people who are actually going to look at it, some decide to ignore certain pieces, certain cells in a sheet on the clipboard, and some don't ignore it. And so then when you do a quick spot check afterwards, and you ask a very experienced person who's worked at that plant for many, many years, what did this operator do? What did they write down here? And they will generally tell you, well, here they did this and there they did this. But then if you actually point them to those areas that look suspicious, you're frequently going to get that person rub their head and say, yeah, they were not supposed to write it down this way. So that happens. That happens these days in this day and age. So then you get that information and you say, okay, when they actually need to find something out, when they're doing some discovery of some forensics, when the problem occurred, they don't have it written down anywhere else. It's just there. So now they're going to pieces of paper, wherever it's stored, they're looking through it. It takes a lot of time. Now, when they're slightly better off and they have a lot of this in Excel, they are still frequently not forced to put good quality data in there. So a lot of those Excel forms that we've seen, they allow blank entries. So if you didn't put something in, oh, well. So you will still have data missing, but at least it's on some network drive and some file somewhere. The problem is it still takes time to find stuff. So we've been standing next to a quality manager at one of these places and asking for an example of a certain event that we were discussing. And then what happened was, because there is hundreds of Excel files and they all look very similar, the difference in their name is just the date. And so this person had to open, check, see if that Excel actually has that issue. No, it doesn't. He opens the next one. No, it doesn't. The third one. No, that you can't search. So this actually took forever just to find an example of what we were talking about. So this is where we get to, if you have integrated systems, this kind of finding information, having information at your fingertips becomes very easy. In a few seconds, you'll find the answer to the question you've had. So very, very different type of environment. But we're talking about the time wasted on non-value added activities at these places. And actually, it might seem kind of straightforward as we talk about it right now. It doesn't look as straightforward to the people on the ground, just like we talked about it before. If they're so used to what they've been doing, they might not even be thinking, how can I do this better? So it always pays to, take a step back and think, okay, does this make sense? Are you wasting time on some of this stuff?
Although I think when it comes to searching for data, I think people are becoming less and less patient when it comes time to do that, because they're so used to, search engines have been around for 20 plus years. So how often is it that you're searching for information like offline in a book and you're like, okay, control F, where's control F? I want to search for that word. And you're holding a book. And for a nanosecond, you're thinking, I want to find this thing quickly. So I think there's less and less patience, especially with Gen Y and Gen Z coming online. Plants, they're less patient than.
Absolutely. And when you have a slow network connection, sometimes people get impatient even with the systems and they start tapping their fingers while there's a spinning wheel looking for something. But at that moment, if you remind them that the alternative was you could go to the file cabinet and look through all that paperwork, and that would be a big no-no. Everybody would just prefer to do something else at that point. But even so, that's just one example. Another example is in these bulk liquid processing facilities where they have a lot of storage tanks, you have the next level of manual versus automated operation. And it is more complicated in the sense that it's more expensive to automate this. But just imagine when you have these huge storage facilities and you need to know every day what's inside each one. How much product do I have? So you have some facilities that have these automated level sensors on each storage tank, and they give you readings every second. You have some kind of reading, and you can then conclude how much of something you have. They still don't tell you what it is, by the way, because there is no chemical analysis being done in real time. So the systems rely on people telling them what product is in the tank. But then in those cases, the level sensor will tell you at least how much you have in there right now. And that's very important for truing up any kind of production scheduling work. You can always bring it back to what do I really have on hand and try to reconcile and make sense of things. But there are places that don't have that. And so they send out people to actually take manual readings. And in some cases, there would be gauges on these storage facilities. And while it's manual work, all they really have to do is walk around each such tank, and there may be tens of them or like over 100 that they need to walk around. And they're still writing down the levels they saw on the gauges on their clipboard. And then that information needs to get into the hands of the other people. So maybe they then will type this in somewhere in the computer. And then we're talking about the time spent between their first tank that they looked at and the time when they collected all of the information and submitted this somewhere else. There's a huge delay. But then there are other places that don't even have the gauges. And so they would climb on stairs, on ladders, and dip the tanks. So they would throw a device, a manual device that would measure how much product was in there. Now, if you have tens of tanks to do that for, and you're walking around with a clipboard, it takes a very long time for somebody to get your data. We've even seen examples where they might be walking around with a tablet so that they record something faster, but it's still walking around and still dipping the tank. So from the time that you got the measurement for your first tank to the time that you got your last one and you submitted the data, it's still a long time. And during that time, the manufacturing site doesn't stand still, it's producing. So that means in those tanks that you just measured, the product is moving. And so by the time that you're submitting your results, it's already outdated. And so people work with that, believe it or not. And that's where we have a lot of these conversations about how can we improve things short of giving everybody automated sensors everywhere so they have real-time visibility. But real-time visibility obviously is the number one priority if you can afford to invest in those sensors and automation.
Well, Konstantin, with dipping tanks, we're actually dipping our toes in our fourth topic, which is audits and lot traceability.
Yes.
How's that
So
for a transition?
yes. So these companies periodically have quality audits, and surprisingly, it's not really whether you can find the answer. The issue is whether you can find it quickly enough. So the auditor gives you a certain amount of time to find the answer, and they would pick some kind of production chain and say, show me all the details for that. And then you're going and trying to look up things. And so when we started in this business, it used to be all paper, file cabinets, and Excel lookups. And we sat down with people that actually did this and talked about each process step and then found ways to use a system solution to actually do that tracking. And it's you sort of wish that you do this once and it's taken care of forever, but it's not, because the process evolves over the years and maybe the same manufacturer, the same site will do things slightly differently. And so you always find areas of greater visibility and areas of less visibility. And so where you have less visibility, maybe there's something just coming in and going right away every single day. And it's just like pass through environment. So in those kinds of situations, we're still looking at how can you design the process itself to be more auditable? How do you make sure that the quality is built in? And it just means looking at the sequence of steps really and saying, if I do this day in and day out, is there any chance I will ever get this right? You know, what do I need to change in my sequence of steps to then say, okay, if I do that step at the end, now that allows me for a quality check So the next time somebody asks me about this process area, I actually know what to tell them quickly. So we have those kinds of discussions. But yes, it is very interesting to see how different sites deal with this. And the common question is tracing product lots. So the auditors will say something like, let's assume there was a product recall because you have some product lot that is tainted. There's some kind of issue with it. Show me where else that product lot is used or where else it went. And so in the old days, they would pull out their Excel files and say, well, let me see when I use this, where else did I use it? So it takes a long time, and it usually may take like a day to properly trace something when it's all on paper. The auditors might not give you that much time. Now, when you have systems, some systems, it also doesn't guarantee that everything will be easy. It will depend on whether they picked the product lot for some kind of product that has a simple path through its evolution. If they did, then you're lucky and it will be an easy response and you got lucky with that particular audit. But if they pick something complicated, you better make sure that the processes are consistently designed to be measurable and inspectable, that you can actually inspect the quality properly everywhere. And then, of course, if you have it all on paper or in Excel, good luck with finding the right information in just the right amount of time that the auditor gives you. So the systems certainly help in that scenario.
Good luck finding it, like you said, within the time that you have or at all, because there's a very strong tendency for paper and Excel based data to grow legs and walk away. It can happen due to damages to the actual materials, like paper. If you have some coffee spilled on it, so they just threw it away, or somehow misplaced it, put it in the paper file in the folder that is not where it's supposed to be. So now you can't find it anymore because you're not going to go through hundreds of pages of irrelevant folders just to hope that it might be there. Excel is just a file, right? You can easily move it with a click of a mouse, right? That happened a lot of times to people that are even, I wouldn't expect it to happen, where they would just click on the file and with a quick move of the mouse while it's clicked down, they would move the file somewhere into some other folder. And it's like, oh, where did it go? Like, okay, now let's find where it went. And now you have to search all the folders where you might have dropped that file into by just moving it with a mouse without intention. When you have all this stuff in the system, there's no such problem at all. If it was ever recorded, it's there. It's not going anywhere. You can find it. And that's where the audit and traceability kicks in, that even if your process is imperfect, which is in most cases it will be, you can still find the relevant data with relevant ease just by saying, I want to see this. Let me search for this. Let me search for that. And there it is. It comes up and you can add some mental effort to analyze it and put it together. And the less perfect the process, the more mental effort it may take. But at least it's all there. It didn't walk away. It didn't disappear. It was not put in a different folder that now you don't know where that is. That's the big difference between having a system that the data is there, it's backed up, it's never gone, and having paper and Excel where you don't know when is the next time you're going to misplace some of it.
As Eugene was talking about having the systems and finding the data, I remembered one point in the first segment of today's discussion that we forgot to mention, which is sample management. And this perfect example comes to my mind. I remember standing at a site where people were taking product samples and just writing with a marker on the lid what it is and bringing it to the quality lab. Now, as they carry that, things happen. Some of that marker can get rubbed off. Sometimes it's the writing that is super awesome, that it's hard to understand what they actually wrote on the lid. And so then the lab technician gets that jar with the liquid product in it, and they have to make sense of what that is, where it's from. And they usually don't hand it over from one person to the next. The people that bring it to the lab, they leave it on the counter, and the lab has a lot of these samples to deal with. So it's usually later that they get to it. So they get to it, they look at the scribbles, and they're trying to make sense of what this is. And if they can't understand what this is, it's as if they took no sample, and now the alternative you could have is where there are stations that produce barcoded labels at different parts of the process. And whenever an operator needs to actually take a sample to bring to the lab, they push a button, they get that label, they put it on the container, take the sample, bring it, leave it in the lab just like before. But now when the lab technician comes, they scan that barcode on the label and they have all of the information in front of them that tells them where that sample has come from. So think about that it saves the lab a lot of headache if those samples are labeled properly, barcoded, that gives them the unique identifier of where that is, what process that came from. And now you're dealing with it. So this is also part of what we're talking about with having quality built into the process. So we make sure that the lab doesn't waste time trying to make sense of what doesn't make sense with the samples.
That was a pretty exhaustive topic, I say. Yeah. See, the funny thing is that there's such positive people, but we keep talking about problems at the plant in these episodes. But that's because like opportunity stems from problems. So there's just so many things that need fixing. But the good news is that like these things that we're talking about, these piles of problems, they've been solved before multiple times by several companies, plants, factories, whomever. So the solutions are out there. So the question is never, is there a solution to our problem? Because I can say with 99% confidence that the problems that you're experiencing, be it quality or anything else, they're not unique to your plant, to your organization. Almost 100% sure that somebody has dealt with and fixed that problem. I guess we'll never run out of problems to discuss and to fix and to talk about. And I'm looking forward to the next episode. And I don't know if we can tease the next topic, if Konstantin, you have anything in mind for
Yes. Next, we want to talk about some production scheduling issues.
issues again.
Yes, issues create opportunities. If we're talking about continuous improvement mindset,
Sure.
then if somebody thinks they have no issues at their plant, I want to talk to them. I want to see at what level they're operating.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Okay. So next up is scheduling. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for sticking with us today. I hope you found the session insightful. Remember to rate this podcast episode in our podcast. You can do it in Apple Podcasts and Spotify or wherever you are listening to this episode right now. If you're on YouTube, give us a thumbs up and a follow, and we will see you in the next episode. Goodbye.
Yes. Goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you. Guys, thank you so much for sticking around. I hope you could find some valuable insights from this episode. We'll be releasing new episodes soon, so stay tuned. If you have any thoughts, ideas, comments, suggestions, or just want to chat, you can find us on LinkedIn. Links are in the description. See you next time.